Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. It's that time again. It's another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Yep, my throat sounds like this. So I got a bit of a cold settled into my throat, my chest, but you know what? We just keep on moving. So let's see if we can get through this before I completely lose this damn thing and get this lesson out to you. All right. So not only is the fat, bald old guy what he is, but today he sounds funny. So anyway, hopefully this will clear up. I tried keeping my throat moist and all that, but anyway. So uh, ironically or coincidentally, I think that this fits the theme pretty well because if we're not careful, we can let little things like this trip us up, right? So we're taking a look at advanced Kazushi today, and Kazushi is typically translated as balance breaking. So that's why when the information went out, right, what I put out was seeing the hidden opportunities for balance breaking in your techniques. Okay, but is it really balance breaking? Well, it is, but right, that point of this whole series is to look at things in a different way. All right, so quick warning though, this lesson is designed for those who have a really good handle on the basics, right? And those in the upper intermediate areas of their training, and more importantly than their training, their skill proficiency level. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that those newer to the training or to those who are still working kind of through the basic foundational kind of things that or to folks that these concepts are going to be a little bit hard to get their head wrapped around. Doesn't mean that they can't learn from them or that you can't use them if you fall into that category. It's okay, right? What it will do for you, hopefully, is it'll help you to put your current training into perspective, right? So that you'll develop things the way you need to develop them, so that you'll be able to do the more advanced work when you get there. Okay. And again, I apologize if you're having a hard time understanding me. I'm doing the best I can, but again, right, right, we keep on moving, right? So this class, to put it in context, this lesson actually comes from a recent class with my long distance inner circle students, where we have like a weekly Q&A kind of thing. I cover different topics and whatnot, but this most recent one, there were some topics and questions that came up based on balance, right? They took different forms, but this one really kind of led in where we went beyond the conventional idea of what, not only what it means to do balance breaking, but how people think about how it has to be done or how it's normally done. Okay, so uh, this is the next step, right, to get students past this conventional thinking when it comes to this idea of balance breaking, and again, how it's done, right? So we all know, right, whether you're brand new to things or you've been around for a while, right, this perspective I'm talking about, the way most people look at it is generally thought of in terms of locking on and doing something with my body to his body using force, right? Using force, some force of some sort, right? Influence, force, that kind of thing, right? I'm moving him around. Okay, think judo, think jujitsu, those kind of things, right? So we're going to come back to that in a minute. First, even before we take a look at Kazushi and more closely what it actually means and what it's pointing to, right? Because it does go deeper than that, but before we get to that, right, I think it's important to understand that there are three aspects, or what I call realms of training, for this thing that we call mastery. Okay, because I've said this over and over again, any monkey can learn the moves. The trick is, can you apply those moves under pressure when your life's on the line against some jackwagon who's looking to beat, break, or kill you? Or can you apply the principles and concepts that are behind what makes that technique look that way, so that you can apply that same technique in an argument, against a pushy salesman, whatever, right? So Anyway, right? So again, people often throw around terms like body, mind, spirit, right, and how they're a part of the training, and um, but overall, people tend to focus almost entirely. If we think about body, mind, and spirit, right? People tend to focus almost entirely on one of those, right? Another one gets a bit of attention, so long as the student or the teacher or the practitioner thinks that that is going to reinforce the primary, right? And then the third one is often considered to be, I don't know, a side effect, right? This is what happens if you stick with it or whatever, right? Rather than as an equally important avenue or part of their total training with a teacher. Okay. And I did a video on this not too long ago. And if you're in my either my inner circle group and you're going through the physical training in Ninpo Taijutsu, or you're in the realm of the tactical warrior, the warrior tactician course, this is in the personal development training section, I think for week 5, but you can take a look at that, right? So these 3 areas, where did I put this? Over here, okay? Kind of jumped around a little bit this week, right? So these 3 areas, right, in Japanese are known as taiden, okay? Taiden. Den means transmission, right? So how the lessons are transmitted, how they're not just taught, how they're transmitted, how you get them from your teacher, okay? So tai, right? Tai is body, okay? Your teacher either primarily demonstrates a technique, so you see their body moving relative to either space because they're doing something solo, or their body moving in relationship with another body or whatever. And then secondarily, your teacher could come over and either one of 2 things, either demonstrate the technique on you so you can feel what's going on the uke side, on the receiver side, or part B to that is they could physically grab a hold of you and go, no, it's over here, or your arm goes here, or whatever, okay? But either way, body transmission, okay? Second one is called kuden. Most of you know about the Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern podcast that I do called Kuden Radio. And Kuden, that's where this comes from, okay? But in all honesty, these Warrior Whiteboard Wednesday things are Kuden, because very rarely, if ever, do I demonstrate something with my body. I might, as I'm describing something, my body might move a little bit or whatever, but this is not a body transmission avenue of training, which is why we have less people watching this than we have looking at my physical technique demonstrations. There's also less people finding fault with this stuff too, because there's less, the people that are typically attracted to the trained monkey doing stuff, right, are the ones who are also most likely to tell me I'm wrong, it's bullshit, I'm fat, whatever, right? Because those people are physical oriented and they think that they're going to get everything that way, right? Kuden, right? Ku literally translates to void, but what kuden is mental, right? It's the mind, right? It's our level of understanding about things. But again, remember what I said, most people focus on one of these. A few, right, a smaller percentage pay attention to this, but only so much as they believe that it makes them better here, okay? There's a bunch of other people that jump into here, but I'm betting that this sacrifices sometimes as well, because they get into arguments about history and they get arguments about, you know, whether or not somebody has a correct memorized list of the grandmasters in Timbuktu lineage or whatever. But this is everything from strategy to self-knowledge, right? Know thyself, all that kind of stuff, right? What do you know that can help you win and survive something, right? When most people focus on this, we know what they're thinking of when they think of survival and self-defense and all that, and it's somebody's physically attacking them, right? But what do you know about how to live your life and control your environment? so that they never freaking pick you. Well, that's a waste of money, Sensei. Why would I learn this stuff if I don't want somebody to attack me? My question is, if you've ever been in a violent situation, why the fuck would you want somebody to attack you to begin with? That's just retarded. Right? It's the greatest chance for things to go wrong, right? And when I say you, it's a blanket statement. I'm not talking to you because you're all enlightened, right? So Taiden, Kuden is mind, right? And then the third one is Shinden, right? Shinden, right? And this is spirit transmission, give or take, right? A lot of these things don't translate very, very well, but transmission of the heart, spirit, life, that kind of thing, right? So it's in this realm that a teacher who's very, very balanced, like I know everybody calls Hatsumi Sensei sensei, right? But that just means teacher. It just means somebody who conveys knowledge, right? My term for sensei, based on discussions with native Japanese people, knowing what I've learned from him, and they're like, no. The correct term is shiso, and shiso, teacher of life, because that keeps me in the world. This is helping to understand more and more things so that I can live a more intelligent life, right? And then this one is that experience, right? So there's things going on here as well that, how do I carry myself? Why is it important for me to move through the world in a very unassuming way, right? So that most people don't even believe that I do martial arts or I can protect myself or whatever, right? Why is that important? Well, because it takes me off the radar of assholes who are just looking for somebody, or more specifically, looking for somebody else who has a chip on their shoulder. Okay. So, but these are all equal things. This is not a side effect, right? This is how to live life as a warrior. There's some knowledge stuff in it, but if I watch my teacher, how he speaks, how he communicates, I listen to references when he talks about this author or that poet talked about the shit. I probably want to go read those things because he did, and that contributed to his level of understanding. Granted, it's a lot of friggin' work, right? I want to pay attention to how he thinks and how he applies critical thinking and logic to things, right? I also want to make sure that I'm studying the requisite areas. And a lot of these things most people have in martial arts don't even think are related to martial arts, survival, self-protection, challenging. These two things right here, more than this, right? A lot of you, we talked about this in the past, and I don't have room on it here, but this is a good time to do it because this is the first class of 2024. We've entered the year of the dragon. Now it's wood dragon. We'll talk about that some other time. But it's the realm of the dragon. And so the dragon is one half of two different other ways of looking at realms of training, right? The tiger represents the battlefield, the back alley, this stuff, and how this stuff manifests here in actual physical, right? Mortal Kombat kind of stuff, not the video game. Anyway, but the dragon represents being successful in social setting, right? In everyday life, right? So this is a reflection of how I carry myself physically and how I do things with my body. So there might be body language cues or whatever that get reflected here, but this is for how I handle other challenges, how I handle arguments, how I handle pushy salesmen, how I handle whatever the bills might not get paid this month. How am I going to make sure that happens, right? So it's reversed now, right? For the battlefield, we want to go in this order, but in everyday life, this is what most people miss because they think in a vacuum, right? Everything's compartmentalized. In life, it goes this way or it goes this way. Okay, it's very, very different. Okay, so excuse me. Let's see. Yeah, so all of these things are equally important. Not one of these things is a side effect. Could there be side effects that pop out in any one because of something else we're studying? Sure. Okay, like critical thinking is a side effect, right, of learning how to apply logic, learning how other critical thinkers connect the dots, right? And developing mental plasticity, right? Where I'm not so freaking stuck in only one way to do things, right? So, and being able to see the big picture. And then when I'm zoomed in, I can see the tree. When I'm zoomed out, I can see the forest. So I can see things from both perspectives. So there are side effects, but it's not the same. Anyway, we're here about Kazushi. Although, again, all this relates because this is a balancing act. Right? Last thing we want to be doing is throwing our own balance off. Okay? And when we start taking a look at what Kazushi actually means and what it's actually pointing to from the Japanese translation, man, there's a whole lot of ways that we can be undermining things. Okay? All right, so let's do that. All right. So Kazushi, again, if you're not going to make the joke about it, sounds like somebody just sneezed. Right? Kazushi. Again, in most Japanese martial arts, is translated as balance breaking. Okay. And it's not it from a conventional standpoint, but if we could go and look at what's going on behind it, we can recognize that there's way more ways to break balance. And again, the way we define anything creates the ceiling. It creates the limitation, creates the box that we're operating in. Okay. And how we think about it is going to determine how we train. Okay. So Kazushi is actually a conjugated verb. Sorry, back to English class, right? So it's a modified verb, right? The entire Japanese language is centered on verbs, where English is typically centered on nouns, right? The subject and the object, and then they're connected by whatever activity is going on. Okay. In Japanese language, the verb is the primary part of the sentence, and everything else describes it or modifies it or whatever. Not that you need to know that, but when you're looking at things like samurai, samurai comes from the Japanese verb samurao, which means to serve. Okay, so a samurai is one who serves. Okay, that kind of thing, right? So Kazushi is a conjugation of the word kazus. Oops, it should be kazus. Okay, kazus has what I've come up with just for today's class is 8 different translations, or they're all related, but 8 ways of looking at this. And we're going to see how it's not all just what it is. Once I really started diving into things like this, I realized just like judo being the gentle way is a horrible translation for what judo is all about, right? Kazushi, same thing, right? Balance breaking, it's a terrible translation, okay? It's okay for beginners to get started, but that's no different than a kata. It's a place to get started, right? It's not the thing to put on the altar and pray to every day, right? All right, so I'm going to give you 8 different ways to look at kazus and what it can mean, okay? It can mean to level, okay? As in you just leveled it, right? To pull down. Okay. Again, we're still at force, right? Well, that one might not be. Okay. To tear down still sounds like force. Okay. To knock down, damn sensei, we're still at force. I thought you said this went beyond that. Yeah. To whittle away at. You know what whittling is, right? You take a stick and a knife, just a little bit at a time, right? We could say that sculptors who work with stone, right? We say they chisel at, right? But it's a whittling away. They don't just like bang, hammer in and knock out a clunk and hope that the guy's, whatever the statue is, his jawline and neck and shoulder are exactly the way they're supposed to be. It's a little at a time, right? So we're getting to a different place here, right? Because whittling is not a heavy force kind of thing. It's not that it's not, but it's much, much lighter, okay? To destroy or demolish, okay? So it's an attack, right? To break, So here's where people tend to settle, right? To break, right? Or to change. Human beings hate change. All right. So there's a lot to this, right? How many ways can we do this, right? So I've heard many different teachers translations or descriptions of a lot of these Japanese terms, like kamae, right? Is it a posture? Is it a position? Is it an attitude? Is it right? Uh, if I ask an everyday Japanese person, one person told me it's to be aware of your condition, right? So, shit, well, that's different, right? But one of the best interpretations that I've seen for Kazushi, and it served me for a long time, but again, everything gets transcended, right? And again, it'll serve us for part of this lesson, is undermining the foundation. Okay, undermining the foundation. Because one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was coming up through the art, was in an attempt to break somebody's balance, we're wrestling with their strength centers and we're trying to force them into an unbalanced position. Well, as soon as we try to apply force, what do? What do? We immediately apply counter force to not be knocked over. We do the same thing in an argument, right? Somebody says you're wrong, and I say, hey, I'm right, you're wrong, whatever, right? It's what makes it an argument. Right? So it's to undermine the foundation, right? And again, for a long time, it was like the best one that I could find. There was and then one teacher took this and went a little bit farther, and he said, it's creating a hole that your attacker will either fall into or is right at the edge of and is doing everything they can because of the fear of falling into it. Okay? Well, shit. I'm putting a hole someplace near them or around them. I'm not trying to manhandle them just so I can apply my technique. No. We're going to look at this, and again, advanced, right? Do the techniques show that you're doing that? Of course, right? Tied in, right? But what I want to look at from this perspective is, instead of applying my technique to do something to them that forces them to the ground, that beats them down, that kind of thing, what I want to focus on is doing things in a way that undermines his stability, his confidence, those kind of things, right? So that not only is his technique difficult to do for him, right? But he's always in a state of falling or afraid of falling or doing something to counter the sensation that falling is going to occur, right, at any moment, right? So when I describe throws to students, and we're going to be talking about this stuff during this Friday virtual training coming up this week. When I describe throws to students, we teach them, the step-by-step kind of thing. Here's how this goes. But as they enter the intermediate stages of training, I tell them, okay, you've got your physical pieces, but what I want you to think about, I want you to shift your perspective from trying to throw someone to creating a situation or an experience or a circumstance for them where their body can't stand up. Now your technique guides this falling, unstable body that they don't have control of. So that's what you do. You take control of their body. Okay. So if you undermine the foundation of a building, right, it falls down under its own weight. Okay. If you can undermine the foundation of your partner, they will begin to fall down, and all you have to do is direct them with your technique or the parts of your technique, right? So we're going to look at that, this idea of a cascading effect with the moves in your technique, instead of just, I do step one, I do step two, I do step three. Why? Okay. So from a balance breaking perspective, we're going to take a look at that here toward the end. But the whole idea here is that if I can guide them with my technique, what ends up happening is the balance breaking I've created, that hole that they're trying to not fall into or falling into, right? My technique is done in a way that prevents them from recovering, right? So it's a whole different way of thinking. It's not, I'm going to break his balance a different way. It's not, I'm going to do a different technique or our style does it this way or whatever, because that's thinking the same way, but doing it differently. I want to think about this in a whole different way. So again, remember what I said, this class was designed for upper level people to go to that next level, but hopefully those of you who are, just getting started or you're in the lower levels and whatnot, this gives you a reason to, and this came out of that class that this one came out of as well. This gives you a reason to really get a handle on your alignment and your balance, your own balance, and your ability to move freely and things like that. Because in all honesty, you're not going to be able to do this stuff if you don't have control of your own body. If your body is constantly fighting balance or fighting gravity or whatever, you're going to have a hell of a time doing this to that other person. Okay. So, and this is one of the principles in the Gyoko school. Okay. It's this idea of wobbling tops or dreidels or whatever, right? If one is got a lot of centripetal force movement, it's very stable and whatnot. If it bumps into something, it just kind of pings, readjusts itself, that kind of thing, right? But if it's wobbling and it bumps into something, it will just, right? Everything about it backfires on itself, right? And it crashes and burns, okay? So if you have two tops and you've got one that's plumb, it's the force is working right, it's not wobbling, it's true. And then you have another one, it's kind of wobbling a little bit, and these two touch. This one will just make a little adjustment. This one's just going to go flying away. And that's the idea in the Gyoko school. You knock him outside that circle, right? But see, everybody hears the knocking them outside the circle, and there's this idea of this application of force. But here comes the question that I had. If Hatsumi Sensei can move as slowly as he moved, but the experience that I had when he touched me, because he didn't wind up, he didn't strike hard or whatever, but the strike was hard. How the hell was that happening? Because he was doing just enough to make that contact, but then why did I get knocked out? Why did I go flying away from his fist? Why did I collapse to the ground? See, something else had to be going on other than, right? So anyway, right? Again, one more analogy with this thing, we'll go back to the building, right? A controlled demolition. If you've ever seen a controlled demolition of a building, right, you understand that they're using explosives. But if you've ever seen it, what you see are these puffs, because these explosives are going off in different places. But you'll see either puffs going down beneath things, or you'll see them like boom, 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 and then boom, boom, and then whatever, right? Because what they're doing is they're weakening things in a very strategic way. So, and this is very important when you're dropping a building in a city, right? You can't just have this thing just like fall over any which way, because you're going to kill a shit ton of people and destroy a bunch of other property, right? So I need these things to go off in a very specific way so this thing levels, right? Right? Okay. Not knocking it down in the traditional way, right? But I'm leveling this thing. I am destroying and demolishing, but what I'm doing is I'm breaking its strength. I'm breaking its support, right? So it literally collapses under its own weight, right? Otherwise, I've got a big problem, okay? So what we're talking about are strategically placed and timed blasts, right, at different points to make it fall where the expert wants it to fall, right? It's very different from just throwing a ton of blasting power at it, right? And shit goes everywhere, or placing the wrong charges at the right places, right? But they're not strong enough to do it there, or the right charges in the wrong place, right? And then the building is still standing with a bit of damage to it, right? And that's the analogy there when we're in martial arts training. That's your partner stepping and catching their balance. that's them technique almost happening, but they recover, or they grab you and pull you down with them, or whatever. Okay, so interesting stuff. I think that's why I bothered to pursue it. Anyway, all right. So today we're just going to take a look at 2 places to break balance that very few people think of, right? That are just fantastic opportunities for breaking somebody's balance. Right? What we're looking at doing when we're breaking balance is putting ourselves in an advantageous position, right? Even if he's bigger, stronger, faster, whatever, if we unbalance him and maintain our balance, no matter how big of a difference that is, we're now the stronger, more stable, in control person, because he's doing more than fighting us. He's fighting gravity, he's fighting inertia, he's fighting all kinds of things. Okay, so 2 places, 2 hidden points. All right, one is before he attacks. Okay, before he throws the punch, kick, whatever. Okay, and there's 3 ways to do that. There's 3 ways to unbalance. Okay, so I'm just going to abbreviate because they match these things over here, right? We're going to do it physically, right? We're going to do it mentally, and we're going to do it emotionally, which would match up with the spirituality kind of thing, right? As long as you're not buying into religion, right? So we can do it physically, right? What does physical unbalance look like, right? Physical unbalance is experienced as the risk of falling down. The body does certain things. I don't care if you rolled your ankle or whatever, there are certain things that signal, right, the body mind unit trying to not fall down. This is an experience, right? And maybe in some other class we'll talk about things that you can do as a solo student if you don't have any training partners to kind of train so you can understand the experience you're creating for them. This is important, right? Because I will always volunteer to be an uke for my teacher, because in the position of uke, I get to experience something that if I don't take that position, I can only theorize. I can only assume what's happening because I'm focused on being this guy, right? But I don't know what that, other than it's hitting him, I don't know what that's doing to his body. I don't know what the uke nagash does. I don't know what that movement away and then that crashing back. I need to experience what the attacker is supposed to be experiencing. Okay, so that's the other side of tight end. The other side of tight end transmission is your body experiencing, right? Is it receiving the technique? Do you understand what you're creating, right? So it's not just theory. It's not just hunt and peck, hoping for the best, whatever. Okay, so what's physical unbalance? Physical unbalance is the risk of falling down. Okay, mental, right? What is mental unbalance? Okay, mental unbalance is confusion. He doesn't know what to do next. He doesn't know what you're going to do next, right? You're not a foregone conclusion. All of his assumptions are wrong, right? He's got to make up shit on the fly, right? He's kind of lost, right? So he's confused. Now, the more of these you can do at the same time, the better, right? So, I'll come back and give you examples of these things here quickly before we wrap things up, right? So, emotional, right? Emotional imbalance. What does emotional imbalance look like? Okay. Emotional imbalance looks like frustration, fear, anger, that kind of stuff, right? Even cracking a joke and getting somebody to laugh, right? Okay, they're in a different state. Okay, they're unbalanced because they're not stabilized and structured and positioned well for being in the attacker's position. Right? So how can you do some of these things, right? Well, and again, a lot of these things are going to cross over as I describe them because I don't see them as separate. I studied them as separate, but the more things I can do at the same time, onaji, at the same time. It's a common word in the scrolls, right? The more I can do at the same time, better off I'm going to be. So what can I do here? Well, as I'm negotiating and moving around, I don't mean negotiating like talking him down or whatever. As I'm moving around, as he's moving into attack, I can be steering so I lead him onto a uneven ground, or I lead him onto a staircase, or I lead him onto like a rocky driveway or something like that, where, you know, or onto sand or something where he's not used to doing that, or based on the footwear that he's wearing, there's a mismatch, right? I can lead him into a grove of trees, or into a doorway or something where he's got to navigate this thing to be able to get at me between parked cars, all those kind of things, right? So I'm putting him in a position where I'm trained to navigate that well. He's not, right? Okay. So guys that typically fight way up here, not going to be all that great on unstable surfaces, because they don't spend a lot of time learning to be stable on unstable surfaces, which is why ours different, because we had to be in either bare feet or straw sandals on muddy, bloody, wet battlefields. Right? So everything is different. The reason we move low, right? And this is the problem when people start to mix and match. Well, I don't like that kind of stuff. I like fighting like this, so I've adapted the art. Well, what you did was you just took away a major strength that the art has based on a given environmental condition that you're not thinking about, because your fights have always been in the same type of places, in a ring, parking lot, whatever. Okay. What about confusion, right? Well, confusion, every time he moves in, right, I can switch come I can change, so it changes the range, or I can do something, I can say something, whatever. You know, he says, I'm going to punch you right in the freaking face, right? And I go, and that's going to do what? Okay. I'm going to punch you in the face, maybe. Who the hell says that? Okay. So I want to kind of get things to lock up a little bit, right? What about frustration? Okay, moving around, that kind of thing. As he's moving into range, right, I can be reaching out. For those of you going through the realm of the Tactical Warrior, or Mod 2 for the people in the full program, right? Every time he gets close enough and he bridges that Kukan space, I'm going to reach out, pop on the bones of his hands or his fingers or whatever, stab at his eyes, that kind of thing, where, right, he's worried about getting hit and hurt, and I'm establishing that where he knows, if you're going to get in here really, really close, you better be freaking attacking, because if you get to that edge and you're not attacking, I'm going to bite. Okay. So it creates frustration, right? Or here, I could be in my kamae and looking at him with those eyes that say, you better be willing to go to the morgue, because I don't fight unless I'm willing to. So, okay, you come in here, I'm going to kill you. And if I don't kill you, it's because you got me first, right? Which is why I don't get into fights, because I'm not willing to burn bridges to that extent. And I've got a very small list of things that will cause me to go there. But if I'm there, this is not fighting for bragging rights for me. You can do whatever you want. But so if I can induce fear, if I can induce anger, right, these things will blend together, right? And now he's not thinking straight. He's not thinking clearly. He's thinking emotionally rather than strategically or critical thinking, right? Which makes his body stiffen up and move differently, right? So he's going to forget training, all kinds of cool shit, right? So anyway, so again, each one makes him operate in a certain way before he even attacks, okay? So let's get this one off the board, okay? Even though I covered it a lot, right? Let's get this one off the board, right? And focus on what I think is the number one best way to break balance before he even touches you, right? Then I'll give you a backup, but the backup is like a second chance, and it's in your techniques. It's in all of our techniques. It's like your second chance, but what you just did was move ground zero from ideal to we can make it work from here. Okay? And this is it, strategic thinking, right? Okay. But the number one way, the best way to break their balance, or at least get their balance breaking, right, is to use tricky last second timing when you're evading that shot. Okay? When you're evading that shot. Okay? So this is why we work on this. And again, it's got the opposite of this got reflected last night by somebody who tested. They mean well. They're working really, really hard. But there were some things that they did not pay attention to well enough early on in their training. And now they're coming up on a showdown test. And I don't promote people honorarily or based on time or because they have got a good heart or whatever. I've got too many freaking jackwagons out in the world that I'm going to, and this person works in a prison setting. So I love this guy too much to just go, yeah, okay, we'll just give you rank because I don't want you to feel bad. Okay. But he was moving too soon, right? The person wasn't even unleashing things and he was already moving too soon. So as long as he and his partner are going through the motions to work the technique from here, I guess it's right. But if he's going to be controlling somebody who's bigger, this guy's shorter than me, and he works in a prison. Let's just say, I mentioned this last night, he's not the tallest example of guards or prisoners in that facility. And if shit goes sideways, he's got an uphill battle unless he has some other skills up his sleeve or in his gi or whatever, right? So what we're looking at here is that punch is coming in, which is why we wait as long as possible. So for my knee-dons, one of the first lessons they learn as they start doing kamae, and it looks really silly, right? The first thing they learn is as either right before or as they take kamae, they pucker up. They prepare to kiss the incoming fist, okay? It's not there because I want them to be a jagwagon and kiss a fist. What I want is for them to have such last second timing that they're actually risking getting bumped. So until they learn what's enough where you can touch or just fall short of touching, they're probably going to be late. So this puts a bunch of flesh in front of their teeth, keeps them from ending up looking like I bite your ear off, that kind of person, right? So what we're doing, and this is something I explained to my guys in this class that this thing came from, right? We have to think about the experience. We have to think about things that the attacker doesn't even know is going on. And one of those primary things is when we're punching, the reason people put so much force into that punch to knock somebody out, I know they think it's to knock somebody out. But the reason they put so much force into it is because they're adjusting for the resistance of body mass and all that, right, to hit. This is not a physics problem, right? 2 trains didn't leave Chicago and LA, and it's not that, right? We need to hit them hard enough, but what ends up happening is when we exert that much force, we need their body mass and resistance to not fall down ourselves because we're putting so much in that resistance keeps us from falling. See where I'm going with this? If we move at the absolute last second when his brain has already made that assumption the strike is going to land, and I move last second and create a hole where the target used to be, he will fall. And I don't mean he necessarily falls all the way down, but I just created a hole in front of him for him to fall into. And now my uke nagash, which is going to happen a microsecond after I moved, exacerbates the fall. And the next thing weakens him so that I don't have to hit so hard to finish him because he's already crumbling. I have these little micro blasts in the building. It becomes a chain response. It becomes a chain, right? So the uke nagash, what some people call blocking, that counter strike, that receiving arm, or whatever, is your backup. Okay? So if I move too soon and I hit the arm is still bracing for impact, right? He's locking down for this stuff to not fold and break. So he's planning on hitting. If I knock it offline, see, I didn't just fall forward. I'm pressing out of my shoulder this way, and if that gets knocked offline, there's a fall that occurs. It's not a big one, but it's a fall. We're actually breaking balance long before the average person thinks we're breaking balance. So the farther forward in the timeline you can start breaking balance, the less resistance and the less of a problem you're going to have to deal with when you actually put hands on this person. Okay? It's an interesting, not just an interesting idea, right? I didn't come at this by learning the techniques. I came at this by being the uke and recognizing what my teachers were doing. Son of a, right? One of the first lessons I learned as a white belt in the art of ninjutsu is that a ninja takes control long before their opponent ever realizes that they lost it. Because if he thinks he's about to lose control, or he doesn't want to lose control, or he's starting to look, and he can sense it, his body and brain go into action to stop that, to resist it. So I have to hide this, right? So from a tight end perspective, there is a physical move. If you've ever seen a comedy movie where somebody's about to kick in or bash in a door, and just before they hit it, somebody opens the door, right? Or if you've ever seen somebody go to pick up something they thought was really, really heavy, and they get under it to lift, and all of a sudden there's shit everywhere they've got to pick up because it was nowhere close. It's that feeling, it's that experience that they're having, that we want them to have. And then the technique, right? You're free to move in, right? This starts, for those of you in Bujinkan, Nimpo Taijutsu, this starts with Sanshin, because Sanshin is about penetration, okay? Once you get past the form, there's this thing, right? But at a certain point, we have to stop thinking about our techniques. This is a big reason why Hatsumi Sensei told upper level people to forget technique, to throw away technique or whatever. I don't believe you can ever do that, because you can't forget something you never had. So you had to have it. You'll always have it because you'll own it in your core, in your muscles, that kind of thing. But at a certain point, you need to forget about the technique itself and be paying attention to the experience you're creating for him. And your technique is a guide. Your technique is showing you where the openings will be when he's collapsing, when he's crumbling. You will have a wide, there won't be, these jagwagons that look at the videos and stuff and go, what I would do was, well, one, you've already watched the technique. So you're going to apply a solution after your leg got broken. No. Unless you've got really good ESP, you're not going to know what I'm doing before I do it. So that's off the table, right? But what they can't see watching their favorite videos and watching what they're tuned in to learning from is the shit that senior teachers and practitioners are paying attention to. And that's why the kick happened here. That's why this strike happened there. That's why this happened at the time that it happened, right? It's very, very different, okay? So what we end up seeing then, the real trick, right, is to be able to transcend, to throw away technique after it's served you, right, to find the why. But the real trick, the job of your techniques at this level, okay? Job of your technique at the beginner level is to teach you how a master would go about defending against this particular attack, right? In the intermediate stages, the job of your technique is to teach you strategic and tactical thinking, right? But at this upper level, the job of your technique is to guide him and his downfall, okay? It's to prevent him from recovering. That's another way to write that in there. I didn't leave myself space, okay? Guide him to his downfall, or to prevent him from recovering. Okay, it's a whole different way of thinking. Okay, so that's what I have. And again, this Friday coming up, there's the URL again, right? We're back on track with the new year. We're going to be taking a look at this from the perspective. We're going to go through a couple of these levels, but we're going to really be honing in on what that last second tricky timing does. So we're going to do it more with training drills than actual physical technique. And then how, if we do this right, that adds to that falling sensation. And if we don't do this right, this becomes the backup to initiate what we tried to do here. Okay. It's very different. Okay. Very different. So hopefully those folks who do come to class live, their break falls are good and whatnot, but it's not that this is not going to be about slamming people into the ground. It's going to be about how to get them to be an accomplice to their own ass kicking. We're going to be taking advantage of things and the way they think and the way they use their body to accomplish the goal that they don't even know they're doing. That's where the magic is. Okay. So I hope you'll make it in for that. Or even if you don't, right, from now on, when you look at technique demonstrations or you go back through the stuff you already know, you start looking at this from this different perspective where everything, right, everything comes down to these 3 or 4 core principles, okay? Timing, distancing, angling, and essential nature of the technique, right? No matter what kata, we've got our yearly Daikomyosai seminar coming up this weekend, and a big part of what I'm going to be showing in one of the sessions is how you can take any kata and just change the perspective on why you're working that kata, how you're working it, right? So I've got, I don't know, somewhere between 8 and a dozen different ways that you can approach kata, just as a start to give people, right? To approach it so that, yeah, you're still working the same kata, but the skill proficiency that you're gaining by training it that way, okay? And it's not about Henka. Henka is, for most people in whatever level, is a kata. Okay, I'm talking about sticking to the kata. We'll do Henka this weekend too, but hey, hidden. Right? I'm going to start balance breaking somebody's balance here. I do it all the time. The way I carry myself in the world already has people off balance, because the principle is you keep everyone, even those closest to you, ever so slightly off balance. You're always in the stronger position. It doesn't mean you don't love them. That doesn't mean any of those things. But if I carry myself this way, anybody that chooses to step up starts from a position of unbalance, either physically, mentally, or emotionally, which gives me the advantage. This was the hardest one to get to because everybody starts here, and that's fine. But right, those lessons take the longest to ingrain and become the new habit. Right? Either way, right? So hopefully you can make it for the Friday class, and if not, no harm, no foul. Hopefully I've given you enough to move forward. Whether you're watching this at the very, very beginning of 2024 or sometime in the future, this is the place for it to start. Hopefully I served you. And if I have, please like and share and comment. Share the links if you're on YouTube or whatever, so other people can benefit from these things. Also, leave comments. Right? What was your greatest aha moment? Right? I'll delete flaming things because if it doesn't serve, and you can critique. Right? You can bring a problem to me as long as you're also bringing a solution that's different than your way sucks because my way's best, which is infantile. So that's not going to fly. Right? And I don't get into pissing contests with 6-year-olds. So, but what was your aha moment? What really stood out for you in the way you're looking at this? And if you already have it, you can always put, I already knew this stuff. This was stupid. It was a waste of an hour of my life. Okay. Well, the rest will probably be a waste too, so don't subscribe. Right? But if it did serve you, don't forget, if you're on YouTube, hit that like and that bell icon or something like that, right? So you can subscribe. That way, you'll get heads up every time. And there's also places that you can click on and whatever, if you're on Facebook and things like that, to get on the email list so that you get heads up every week about these things coming out, what I'm teaching, and those kind of things. Okay. All right. That's it. That's what I got. I'll see you next time. Be safe. Train hard. Be a warrior.